Welcome to Module 3, Airbrush. Now you can use an airbrush if you want to. They're expensive unless you already have one, but I figured out a way to do it without using an airbrush. And they are, and it's absolutely free, especially if you go to a bar or someplace, a straw. I have one that's that's a normal size. I have another one that's very thin for detail work. And I have a double for large applications, okay? And that's what we're going to use on that. Now, we also, you had to think of, whoops, I dropped one of my brushes. You also need your paint, but the paint's got to be a little bit different. You have to dilute it. It has to be runny like water. But you don't want to dilute it too far, because if you do, then the paint's not going to look very good. Your colors aren't going to pop. What I do is you want to save all the empty bottles you can, or if you have some other artist friends that use these, ask them for their empty bottles. Actually, you can buy a whole bottle of paint and empty it cheaper than you can buy the empty bottles that they have in the stores. Many times I've just taken one that I knew I would never use, something or whatever, and I just empty the paint out of it, or half the paint. So what you do on these, I do them in different dilutions. I have some that are like 40-60. There's 60% paint, 40% water. I do a 50-50. Sometimes I'll do a 25-75, 25% water. Others I use full strength, but not very often. About 50-50 is the least you want to go, because it gets way too thin. I'm going to shake this up against the microphone so you can hear it. You can hear that it's pretty thin. And what you have to do is pretty much like you do the finger painting. You have to lay out, you have to think about what you want to do with your, the painting is going to look like, and apply your paint accordingly. Then it's just a matter of using the straws to blow the paint around on the canvas. So I'm using another black canvas. I had a pack of 3 of them, so I'm going to do black. And again, I'm not going to try to make any real picture. I'll show you some ones that I scanned and make into prints. You can see those. I'll put those at the end of this module. Now this one, you've also got to have a piece of cardboard or something behind it, because you can blow paint onto it. And another thing too, so you don't want to get paint spattered all over every place except onto the piece of cardboard, or whatever it is you want to use. You can use an old shower curtain, and different ways of doing it, as long as you protect the walls and everything around you. Now, another thing too with the straws. Okay, the nice thing about this over an airbrush is that you can regulate the amount of air coming in and out, going onto the paint, without having to stop and adjust the airbrush. You can do a long like that. You can do a like that, or you can do a like you're spitting. When you spit and throw a lot of air, though, it's going to splatter paint a lot. So keep that in mind when you do this, okay? Another thing is you're going to have to experiment. Practice with it. Use the same old watercolor paper that I told you about. You won't need the other palette paper or the butcher paper. And when you get them done, just set them aside, let them dry, and you can do what you want with them from there, okay? On a canvas, it's kind of the same thing. The larger the canvas, the more paint you're going to need. If you're a smoker, you're going to have to probably take a couple of breaks. If you're doing it in a warm atmosphere, out here right now it's in the 50s, so I don't have to worry about the paint drying too fast, but it can dry pretty quickly if you're not careful. So that's where we are right now. What I'm going to do is turn off the camera, get everything set up so that you can see what's going on, and we're going to go from there, okay? So I'll be right back. Okay, I have everything set up here like it's going to be. Now this is where the turntable comes in very, very handy, because now I don't have to worry about moving around it. I can keep the cardboard. I don't know if you can see it or not right from here. I'll bring it around. There's the cardboard. You can see where there's paint splatters on it. Bring this back over here to the canvas. Get that about sitting where I need it, right about there. I want it close up so you can see what happens when you do certain things. So let's start. Let me pull out some paints here. I'm not going to worry about colors so much, just so you can see the blending. We'll get some reds, blues, oranges, yellows. Where's some yellow? Light blue. I don't know what color that is, but yellow or light green. And what else have we got here? There's another yellow, light green, a red. Yeah, auxiliary. Yeah, that'll be a good one. What else we got here? A darker yellow. There's some white in here someplace. There's some white. Now you got to remember one thing too. If these things sit for any length of time, you've got to shake them up to get it mixed back in, because the water will kind of separate from the paint. And just kind of remember, like we did with the finger paint module, that you have to kind of decide how you want this to look. And say for the time being, all I would do is just put paint down and look at it and see how it turns out. Blow it around and see what you come up with. It takes a lot of experimentation to get to where you're pretty adept at this. Anyway, let's get started. Okay, we'll take some of the, you can see how thin the paint is. You got to be careful not to use a whole lot of paint, because if you do, it's going to take forever to dry and it'll run and all kinds of things. So you've got to be careful about what you're doing there. Put all the blues on first, because I want those for pretty much kind of like the base color. See how it's doing right in here? It's because this one is much thinner than the others. When you put the thin ones, you put the heavier ones down. You're like 25/75s first, and then you go from there. And then you put the thinner ones down on top of the heavier ones. You see how this heavy one here doesn't quite do what the light one did? Okay, let's go with the light green. I don't know if there's much in this one. There might be enough. That's it, it's bubbling, so that's all there is of that. See if I can find another light green. Now this one will work. There's some left in this one. This is kind of an olive green. And like I say, you put them right over the top of each other again. Now we'll do some yellow. And like I said, I'm not really trying to make anything out of this. I'm just going to show you the techniques involved. So this one is almost completely full strength here. This is a little bit lighter. Pop that bubble. And then a red. This one's pretty thin. You got to be careful with the darker colors, because they tend to obliterate the lighter colors if you don't. And what you can always do too is, when after you blow everything and you say, oh well, you know what, maybe I can use it, I can change that a little bit, and then all you have to do is put some more paint on and blow some more. Pretty easy to do. Now that one's empty. And now a little bit of white for the highlights. Better shake this one. Yeah. Okay. A little bit of white for highlight. And we're ready for our airbrush. Okay, now I'm going to use the wide one only on this one, just so that you can, so it doesn't take as long to do it. We'll start out by blowing. You can start at the middle, you can start at the sides, but you always want to blow out to the edges of the paint until you get it pretty well covered, okay? You can see that it's already running over here, so I'm going to turn it around this way and blow back in. You notice I'm turning it while I blow. And I got too much white there, so I'll come around here. I'm just using a nice, even blowing volume of air right now. Okay, now what I'm going to do is do some of the type on here, and you'll see what happens. See what it does? See, it just splatters paint all over the place. And very lightly. A little harder. Remember, when you blow hard, you bring in the paints that are underneath more than they're on the top, and it kind of mixes them together. Now, you don't want to overblow, because if you start overblowing it too much, then everything kind of runs together, and all your paints mix in. You end up with this an ugly looking mess. And nice easy blowing again. You can see some places along here where the paint has splattered. I'll show you what the cardboard looks like now. Look at all the paint that's splattered. So you got it. That's why you need the cardboard set up. Okay. This one isn't all that great looking, because, like I say, I just slopped some paint down onto it to give you an idea of how this works. I'm not going to bother even keeping this one. Yeah, it looks like it might be okay. See how the paint's running back together? I've got a little bit too much paint on here, so it just runs back together. And which is what I didn't want to happen, but that's okay. I mean, this is where the experimentation comes in. And that'll probably pretty much do it. And that's how you do these. There's your airbrush. So that's pretty much how you do it. I can't really get the camera in any closer. Well, maybe I can. Let's see what we can do here. You can actually see it a little bit better. Let it focus again. Now you can see a little bit better of what it's going to look like, how it reacts. You don't necessarily have to cover the whole thing if you don't want to. It's a little bit blurred, and I'm sorry about that, but I've got this thing on a tripod. I unattach it. Let's see if I can unattach it here and get in a little bit closer. You can see I got to be careful I don't get the cords on the paint. There, that's a little bit better. You can see it now. And that's how you do the airbrush. Now, I like to do a lot of mine to make it look like kind of like this right here. That ends up looking like a map, or like the earth or land from space, or an ocean from space. A lot of different things you can do with this. You might want to try just using all of one shade of color, or one color and different shades of that color, and see what you do with that. Mixing blues, greens, and yellows, or blues and yellows will give you some greens. There's all kinds of ways of doing this stuff. It's just a lot of fun, really. I really enjoy doing these. It's one of my favorite things. Anyway, that'll pretty well do it. I'm going to shut it off now, and we'll come back to it a little bit later. And when it's dry, and then I'll show you how to. We'll go into the spray coating of them, so that they're using a UV protective spray coating, a clear or a matte or glossy. Yeah, so we'll come back to that a little bit later. Okay, that's about it for now. I'll show you the pictures now, and you can see what they look like when they're done.